Thank you, Acting Speaker. I rise today to speak to this take note on the 2024 budget, which I note was handed down 203 days ago. So it's taken quite a while to get to this point, to have the opportunity finally to speak on the day that it happens to be the 2-year anniversary since my election and the election of many others here in the chamber. But the situation has got much worse since the budget. It's got much worse over the last 203 days. The original situation that we heard about was that the situation by 2027 would be a $188 billion debt with $26 million of taxpayer-funded interest payments every single day. But in the last few days, we now have current projections showing that the debt will then grow to $228 billion by 2028, which will mean even more interest payments every single day for taxpayers. Now, the member for Coraroit before mentions that this government cares about people and cares about families. How are you caring about people? How are you caring about families? Indeed, how are you caring about children when they will have to pay this debt back for perhaps decades or even generations to come if this debt is not brought in soon and lowered soon? We have projections and current rates of debt growing at $80 million a day, which is above the rate that we are paying back by 2027 of $26 million a day. It is growing at a rate where a bailout has even been talked about in recent news articles and elsewhere. It's grown at a rate where the credit rating has been downgraded and where we might soon see further credit rating downgrades as well. We have the largest debt per capita in the whole of Australia, which is not something to be proud about. We also have the lowest credit rating out of any state in Australia as well. But this debt is not just about numbers. It is about what it is doing in terms of our ability to provide the infrastructure and services that our communities and Victorians need and deserve. For example, if you look at roads across my electorate and across the whole of Victoria, we are seeing an enormous amount of potholes that are just sitting there for ages, and indeed, in some cases, they are craters. We see homelessness going up and up and up. In my electorate and across the Mornington Peninsula now has the 4th highest level of homelessness in Victoria. And that is matched with a situation where we have 61,000 now on the public housing wait list. And crime rates as well, and crime incidents continue to go up as well. In my electorate alone, crime incidents have gone up by 22% in the last year, and family violence rates have gone up by 17%. In this space, and particularly because of the debt levels we now face, Victoria Police are 1,000 personnel short of where they need to be. In my electorate of Mornington, the reception hours for Mornington Police have been reduced from 24 hours down to 16 hours. We have this situation where bail laws have been weakened, and it is very discouraging for police who are in the situation of arresting criminals to have to rearrest them again and again as they keep getting bail. Now, I know that Mornington Police are doing the best they can to tackle the increased crime rates. However, it is clear that they are under-resourced and underfunded, and that links back to this budget we are talking about. I have personally spoken with police officers in my local area who have stated that they need more resources and staffing to tackle the increased crime rates and indeed to do the preventative crime work that they want to do. Despite consistent representations to the Minister for Police and to this Labor government, it is a travesty that the government has not only refused to better resource Mornington Police, but has actively cut funds from crime prevention and community safety initiatives. Now, if we look more broadly at the situation we are facing in Victoria because of this debt, on public transport, so many projects have been neglected because the Allen Labor government has tunnel vision on the $216 billion suburban rail loop. They have also significantly overspent and wasted funds on many other projects across Victoria. And I note that recently, the Labor government signed the first major tunnelling project and the first major tunnelling contracts for the suburban rail loop, despite expert recommendations against this. Now, if we did have more funds available, we could do so much more for public transport in my electorate and beyond, particularly for places that have minimal public transport or indeed have no public transport altogether. For example, I've been advocating fiercely for changes to bus routes around Mornington, just to get buses to service existing bus stops at 2 retirement villages, a holiday village and a school. And I have been advocating for a long time now, even before I was elected, for the Mornington to Hastings bus service. Now, I'll give credit where credit is due. Finally, after working hard with the community and advocating to this government, they have committed to the Mornington Hastings bus route, and they have finally committed to deliver bus services to these retirement villages. But for the people at the retirement village, they are told that these simple route changes will not happen until that Mornington to Hastings bus route is brought about, even though those simple route changes could happen now. I am calling on and continue to call upon this government to make those changes now. We shouldn't have to wait even longer for the Mornington to Hastings bus service to come about. And I've also been advocating for rail services to our electorate, which currently has none whatsoever. But state Labor's lack of investment due to financial mismanagement in extending Metro Rail from Frankston through to Baxter and not committing to the project that was in part funded a number of years ago through my efforts when I was in federal parliament, has led to Labor at the federal level dropping $225 million of budgeted funds that I had secured for this project, which importantly would have provided not only services to Baxter, Langwarrin, the hospital and the university, but would have opened the way for services to return to Mornington, Somerville, Hastings and the Stony Point line. Now, beyond my electorate as well, places like Mildura still don't have a passenger rail, even though we've had, by the next election, 23 out of the last 27 years of a Labor government here in Victoria. That is the largest population centre in Australia with no service. Or places like Horsham, where I grew up, have no regular rail services, other than the occasional overlander. It is disgraceful that Victorians continue to be ignored because of the Allen Labor government's financial mismanagement and cost blowouts on other projects. Homelessness, as I mentioned as well, is getting out of hand on the Mornington Peninsula. In fact, as I mentioned, Acting Speaker, we have the 4th highest level of homelessness in the state. The number of people who are homeless on the peninsula is estimated to be anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 plus, although no exact numbers are known. 15 to 20% of that number consist of people who are sleeping rough, which is an extremely high rate compared to the rest of the state. Ever since my election as the member for Mornington, I have been tirelessly urging the state government to intervene to solve the homelessness crisis on the peninsula. In particular, I've called on the Minister for Housing to ensure that vacant public housing is fit for purpose. I believe, at least according to the data that's been provided to the Mornington Peninsula Shire, that over 30% of public houses on the peninsula are vacant due to being in disrepair, unfit for purpose or otherwise unavailable for habitation. This is disgraceful, as many of these homes could be provided to vulnerable individuals. In addition, while the government has proposed building over a significant amount of new public houses across Victoria, only a very small portion of this has actually been built, and an even smaller proportion on the peninsula. A local mum contacted me recently stating that we are now homeless, we spent 2 nights sleeping in the car and are now in crisis accommodation. We are being housed in a motel with men who have been removed from their homes due to committing family violence, with addicts and people suffering from mental health issues. The door to our motel room is a flimsy interior door, there is no heating, and the cleanliness of the room is appalling. This is distressing, and we are failing our most vulnerable. And that's an example of a person who is not yet sleeping rough, but many people are sleeping rough. I just met with another mother of a young daughter who's been sleeping in her car in different friends' driveways for many months now. This is a disgraceful situation that needs to be fixed. And linked to this is public housing. On public housing, and this also links to the debt issue, because if we had more money to spend, we can actually resolve a lot of these issues. I am reliably informed, as I mentioned, that over 30% of public houses on the peninsula are vacant due to being in disrepair or otherwise. But so far I've heard absolutely nothing from the state government in terms of solutions to these vacant homes. And this is not just confined to the Mornington Peninsula. Victoria has thousands of vacant public housing dwellings and continues to have the worst occupancy rates in the nation, with new data showing that the state has added a mere 300 new public homes in the past 8 years. What does the government say to people in my electorate, like Linda in her late 70s, who is going blind, no longer able to drive and surviving on the pension in private rentals, depending on friends and community resources for food? More than 4,000 residents like her are on the public housing waiting list, but there are just 1,400 social housing properties across the peninsula. Speaking of insane, a few months ago, the Victorian government spent $20 million on an affordable housing block in Cheltenham, a property which was linked to a liquidated building company which has strong links to notorious residential construction company SLC Bayside that collapsed last year. The Cheltenham property itself has multiple defects. You would think that the government would do their due diligence. Unfortunately, this is a pattern across the state. The world of development is essentially a cowboy industry from some. An overall lack of oversight in the construction industry under this Labor government is fuelling a legacy of defects at apartment blocks across Victoria, and it's making it hard for builders trying to do the right thing as well, because they have to compete on cost with those doing the wrong thing. That includes, for example, cracking foundations, balcony defects, mould, flammable cladding, water leaks and more. And the member for Brighton and I went recently to a place in Frankston South that I've been talking about for many years now that has not yet been resolved by this Labor government. Their issues were first raised in late 2018. They've been on national media and more, and they are really suffering. Developers in their case use cheap materials, cheap finishes and cheap construction. I raised the fact of the tribulation of the residents at Colcan Drive in Frankston South, who have been left many hundreds of thousands of dollars out of pocket due to the many defects of their apartments. Simply put, there needs to be criminal consequences for these builders and developers, not just fines, because at the moment they are not even taking action to fix what they caused in the first place. They can't keep getting away with it, and I was incredibly disappointed to see little to nothing done to address this growing issue in the 2024 budget. Now let's go to roads, Deputy Speaker. The Allen Labor government's 45% cut to the road maintenance budget since 2020 has led to the appalling state of roads in metropolitan and regional areas. Wayne from Mount Eliza in my electorate is only one of many who have written to me about potholes being an absolute disgrace and a death trap for motorists. Furthermore, it feels like every second week I am representing constituents to the minister who are concerned about the maintenance, overgrown vegetation and general state of disrepair of the Nepean Highway and Esplanade. Rowan from Mount Eliza, Susan and Amanda are just a few constituents that have raised this issue with me. And I do want to comment as well on the consistent delays by both this state and federal Labor governments on the repairs to both Forest Drive and Urella Road intersections, two deadly intersections which strike fear into the hearts of locals every time they drive through them. The state government have now finally commenced the Forest Drive works after the Albanese government nearly scrapped the funding that was committed by the federal Labor government many years ago after the state Labor government played games on this project simply due to politics for many, many years. But we are still waiting upon the Urella Road intersection upgrade to commence. I'll continue to advocate for these upgrades to go ahead.